Posting on social media, people need to see the evidence of success. Posting other sales that you have, posting about the business, posting you doing open houses. And if you're being consistent and on top of that, like, wow, Austin's doing a lot in the business. Even if you're not closing a lot, doing open houses and posting about those open houses can still convey success.
In the 2 years that I've run the podcast, we've had people on the show that have had billions of dollars in sales. We've had people on the show who have sold $30 million properties. We've had people on the show who have found alligators in their listings. Like, we've had some crazy things. But I think this one might be a first. So today I'm here with an agent who was referred to me by a former guest of the show, who at the young age of 22 years old, which is also the year I started in real estate, so we have something there. At the age of 22, you've already listed and sold over 200 homes. And this year, I pulled your numbers myself. I didn't just trust what you said blindly, right? Like, I had to do my own due diligence. I saw that you have already listed and sold 59 homes this year, so probably 60 by the end of the day today. That's probably, hope so, right? It's going to be a good day. And I should also note that to do this podcast, it's 6 a.m. your time, 9 a.m. my time. So clearly you're up, clearly you're hustling already. But Austin Hellickson, probably one of the number one listing agents in the entire country right now. Welcome to the Neighborhood Owns podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite and letting me join.
So, Austin, why don't we get started? Why don't you tell us about where you're located in the country and how you got your start and when you got your start in real estate? Like, we always like to hear about the origin story.
Yeah, so got my license when I was 18 to start. Then I served a 2-year mission for my church, came back home for my mission, and just kind of, rather than going to college or anything like that, I just dove full force right into real estate. So born and raised in Washington State, my team and I, we cover the entire state. But physically, where do I live? I live about an hour south of Seattle.
Okay. So you mentioned the word your team, and some people listening to this are thinking, okay, bro did 60 listings this year. He probably has 80 people that work for him. What does your team look like?
So we do have a decent sized team. So I have in-house 3 full-time admin assistants, 2 virtual assistants. I believe we're at 7 or 8 buyer brokers on the team right now. We have 1 other part-time listing agent, and we have 2 ISAs who are inside sales agents that all they do is make phone calls.
I like that. So walk me through a typical day. What is each of those positions doing? I understand what the buyer brokers do. Like, yeah. You can skip that. But walk me through how you're spending your time and how your ISAs are spending their time and how the admins are spending their time. I want to understand like what hours you're purchasing that are affecting your outcome.
Right. So basically everything that's not setting appointments or closing listings, the admin team does. So an example, and I have 2 in-house licensed admin assistants, which very much helps myself as well, to where when I sign a listing agreement with a client, I hand it off to the admin team and they handle everything from there until closing. So one of my virtual assistants, for example, they make sure the signpost is in the yard, the flyers get made, the flyers get delivered, that the photos get taken, that it goes on the MLS, that the clients get notified when it goes on the MLS, that the showings are updated. So everything is done on the admin standpoint of things. Then once we get offers, my licensed assistant reviews those offers not only for the team, but then with the sellers, does all the counter offers, gets it under contract, the inspection, the appraisals, you name it. The admin team does that. Do I keep in touch with the clients? Absolutely. But it's all, and we've done it this way so we can all maximize the most with our time. Then
I love that.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the ISAs, 7:30 we have a team huddle. 8 a.m. to the end of the day, 4 p.m., they're dialing for dollars, for lack of better words.
So when they're dialing for dollars, what kinds of people are they calling, and in what size radius are they calling?
The entire state. So I have listings 4 hours away from my house, and I also have listings that are 15 minutes away from my house. So it really just, so with my team, we won't not go somewhere for an appointment. And then who are they calling? Your FSBOs, canceled, expireds, referral-based lead sources, cash offer leads, home evaluation leads, Google leads, you name it, we probably have it as a lead source.
So I like that. So very similar to when I talked to your dad a couple of years ago. You guys have a gigantic bucket of different lead sources. You don't put all of your eggs in one basket, but you guys are diligent about making calls to any of the leads that come in.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about what the script is. So people have been calling expireds for years. People have been calling FSBOs for years. How do you guys do it? Obviously, you put more time in, you put more elbow grease in. I think that really probably is the secret sauce, like just making the calls day after day after day. But I'm assuming with all of that experience, you guys have gotten better at it,
yes,
which then gives you more of an edge. Walk me through, like my house. I have a house that actually might expire soon. Walk me through what a good agent should call me with when they're trying to get my listing again.
So I'll role play it with you a tiny bit, and I'll explain the beginning part of my script. I won't get into the whole part, but I feel like there's one thing that I do a little bit different. So if I'm calling you Matt, I'll say, or we'll go ring, 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 ring.
Hey, hello?
Is this the owner of 123 Main Street?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I apologize. My name's Austin. I actually own the Hellickson team at Skyline Properties. Does my team name ring a bell to you?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know much about you guys, though.
No worries. And to pause, this is kind of like the most important thing in my personal opinion. The reason being, it's just a small pattern interrupt. To your point, I could see you getting a little bit hesitant already on the phone call. Yeah. And rather than just being like, oh, great, it's another agent calling me about the house. They're like, Hellickson team, should I know that name? Yes or no? Most of the time they say no, right? Most of the time, like, nope, your team doesn't ring a bell. Awesome. And then you saw your house to come off the market as it didn't sold. Are you still interested in selling at this point? And I kind of just go into things at that point. But
that's awesome. So let's talk about this pattern interrupt thing. So I've heard of this before. A coach that I follow, Renee Rodriguez, talked to me about that a while ago. Walk us through, for anyone that's not familiar, what's like the definition of this and some other applications of it.
So I do it a lot when I'm setting appointments too, or kind of when someone's honestly being a bully on the phone. I'll give them a pattern interrupt to kind of throw them off their groove. So the specific definition of a pattern interrupt, I guess interrupting their pattern. Interrupting what they're expecting, so that way it keeps them on their toes a little bit more. As you and I probably both know, the first 30 seconds of a phone call, if not even the first 10 seconds of a phone call, are the most crucial points. We have to keep them on the phone. So, and if we can't keep them on the phone, number one, we're not going to set an appointment. And number two, if we keep them on the phone that much longer, the likelihood of having a minute and a half phone call is very much more likely.
Right. So like anytime you're making these calls, especially in today's market where there's no inventory, there's never been a harder time to call expireds FSBOs because they're getting hundreds of calls. Now, obviously, if you're first, fantastic. You guys have more experience than most, which also helps you. But everyone you call, they have their guard up, they have their fists up. They're ready to say no so quickly. They're looking for that first way to get off the phone, and so you're catching them off guard, not with anything dishonest, right, but just by getting them to think. And what you're doing is like you're switching their brain pattern from being in the defensive mode, the fight or flight, the fight specifically, to now they're getting into critical thinking.
Yep.
And that's where a good salesperson can thrive, because now you can start mentioning all of the other many things that it's going to take to sell their house and success and like what you've done in the past. And now all of a sudden you've bought yourself, a ticket to the dance.
Which is awesome. And one thing that you mentioned as well that I want to point out is saying no, right? The natural human instinct is to say no for things rather than to say yes. As in, Matt, would you be open to meeting? No. Right? That's a yes or no question. So what I would say, and what I love doing on my phone calls, is I say, Matt, would you be opposed to meeting and hearing what we could do? X, Y, Z? Well, I wouldn't be opposed, right? Because I'm saying no. Awesome. And then one thing that's really important that I want to make sure everybody takes away and writes down: asking an alternative choice close. As in,
okay, give me an example of that. I love that.
So Matt would, rather than saying, Matt, how does Friday at 5 look to meet? I'll say when I'm on phone calls, Matt, would an afternoon or an evening be better? Then they say afternoons. Perfect. Would Thursday at 4 or Friday at 4:30 be better? So I'm giving them 2 or 3 options, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to pick one of those options.
I love that. So, and you're doing it. What I've noticed when I've heard people do these scripts before is that you kind of move really quickly. So like every awkward pause is another out for them, another chance for them to say no. So it's like, Austin, would you like to record this next show tomorrow at 3 or Wednesday at 5? Okay, awesome. Would you prefer to do this way or this way? Like, I'm going to try to get like three yes questions or affirmative answers from you as quickly as possible, because now every time you've given me a yes or an answer, it's going to be harder for you to then get out of this and cancel it, right? Because we've already put so much effort into this relationship and into what we're doing. I love that example. So your ISAs are making most of those calls, or what roles do you partake in the prospecting side of it?
So
are you managing it like?
I'll say just kind of like go into more or less my daily schedule to give you an idea of kind of like where
Please.
that thing looks like. I've been slacking, I'll say, but I try to get to the gym in the mornings. So 4:30, I wake up. 4:45, I get to the gym. Then finish up at the gym, get home, and I leave my house by 6 a.m. for the office. Today was a little bit early for the podcast, but every single day I'm always at the office by 6:30 in the morning. 6:30 to 6:30. This is my email checking time / working on the business, miscellaneous things. So this way I don't have to deal with it throughout the day. 7:30 to 8, we have a team huddle where everybody on the team, either via Zoom or in person, gets together and we talk, report our numbers from the previous day and how things look. 8 a.m., well, guess what? That's when we're allowed to start making phone calls, right? We can't make phone calls before then. So we dial starting at 8 a.m. I always start with my expireds because kind of to your point, they're just not going to answer because the 50 other people have already called them if you call them at 8:10, 8:15. At 12, that's when I head out for my appointments. And I go on those listing appointments depending on where they're at in the state. I'll usually get home anywhere between 8, 8:30 at night. And then rinse and
hit the pillow immediately and recharge for the next day.
Yep. And then I do that Monday through Friday night. I don't work the weekends usually.
Okay, well, that's good. So, I mean, on the one hand, I think people were starting to probably listen and get turned off and say, like, you know what? Good for Austin closing, 100, 200 deals a year. I have no desire to wake up at 4:30 and work till 8:30. But you take the weekends off. Yeah. And I think for many realtors, they're putting in minimal effort 7 days a week rather than maximum effort a couple days a week. And it's really interesting, too, because I'd say of the last 5 agents I interviewed who this year we've been kind of focusing on agents who are bucking the market, agents who are up in a market that's been down for most. And I think the 4:30 wake up thing, I think at least 3 of the last 5 people I've talked to have been on that. I mean, I wake up at 5:30 most days and I feel like I'm missing out now. Like I'm feeling energized. Like tomorrow I'm going to wake up a little bit earlier because the email thing is huge. 8 a.m. till 11 a.m. for me is when my body and mind are most productive at the same time. Like I'm able to tackle the hardest and most complex things and things I don't want to do during those hours. But unfortunately, and I think most people listening feel this way too, you get to the office at 8:30 if you're even halfway a decent worker, and then you spend your time just being responsive to emails, and like they're not money making tasks.
Amen.
So I guess for everyone listening, if you can shift your schedule around, maybe it's not 4:30 in the morning, maybe it's something else. But if you can shift your schedule around so that you're using your most productive time where you have the most energy and the most excitement, and reordering your day, I think that's the key. It doesn't need to be necessarily 4:30 in the morning. It could be something else.
Right.
I like that example.
On that note, when you think, no, it's called like it is. It's making phone calls and sitting in an office is not the most pleasant thing to do, and that's why we just get out of the way the first part of the day. Well, it's like, okay, well, when's the best time of the day to make phone calls? Of course, it's going to be the evenings, right? That's when most people are home. They're off work, you name it. But also, when's the best time to meet with consumers? It's that same exact
right.
thing. So you have to kind of pick and prioritize your tasks when it's available.
All right, so let's talk about how you're actually closing these listings. So your ISAs, you have personally set up systems that you're obviously a very good manager of people, and I think that's half the battle. But you still have to physically show up as a 22-year-old who's impeccably dressed, I might say. So good work there. So, but you still have to show up as a 22-year-old and get someone to trust you to sell their $600,000 house. What's the special sauce there? I mean, you seem like a nice guy, but there's a lot of well-dressed, nice realtors out there who have a lot more experience than you.
Yeah.
Why are people trusting their home sale with you?
Number one, I think it comes down to setting expectations when I'm on the phone call. For when I'm talking to people on the phone, I really dive down into why they're wanting to sell. I don't go too deep on it. But when I get in person, I have a rote listing presentation that almost guarantees me the listing every single time. That the hardest thing for me is getting people to show up in terms of actually meeting. I'll set appointments. My show up rate isn't the best, but when they show up, I'm signing the listing 90-95% of the time. So I guess kind of.
I like that. So
go ahead.
I like that. So let's talk about the struggle there for a second, because I think that makes you seem like a more real agent.
Yeah.
So everyone has struggles out there. So would you say one of the number one struggles in your business is you have a lot of no-shows?
Mm-hmm.
And I think with online leads, that's pretty accurate, right?
Comes down to the lead source, I'll say. So for example, if we're talking on the agent standpoint, we have our sphere of influence, right? Those people 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, are going to show up at your appointment. You're going to have home evaluation, your call it referral-based platforms. Those ones usually show up at a higher percentage. Then there's your cash offer lead sources. What I've noticed.
So what are those? Walk me through that. I'm very familiar with the home evaluation ones. I'm less familiar with the cash offer lead sources.
So cash offers where people are reaching out saying, hey, I just want a cash offer on my house. I want no hassle, no closing costs.
Who are they reaching out to? How are they reaching out? I mean, are these like you're paying someone to put signs on freeways? Like what does this look like?
There's like companies like triggerlistings.com that go ahead and they have client-facing pages that solicit cash offers. Excuse me. And I pay those companies for leads. And then they give them to me. So it'll be like, Susie's looking to sell within the next 6 months at 123 Main Street. And then I go in there and I honestly have a conversation with her about why you want to sell, why you're hoping to sell, or how soon you're hoping to sell. And then are you looking for quick cash or the most for your home? Well, 9 times out of 10, people just want to make as much money as possible. And they're like, well, my goodness, if I take a cash offer, I'm going to get market value and not have to pay closing costs. Wouldn't that be great, man? That actually happened. But
sounds great.
Yeah, right. But the reality behind it is most of these people don't realize that all these other cash offer companies or wholesalers or whatever you want to call them are giving them 50 to 70 cents on the dollar for their house in perfect shape. So I want to say I'm more or less coming to the idea of, you know what, if you're even as is, you're going to net more money on the market. I mean, yes, it's going to cost you 10% to sell a house when you factor in all the closing costs, your taxes, title, commissions, you name it. But after everything's all said and done, you'll walk away with more money. Like, I didn't think about that. I'm like, well, let's at least meet. I can show you how much we can get for you on the market. Like, awesome. And then we can meet.
So those, you said of most of your lead sources, those ones are the ones least likely to show up.
Yes. Because they're a little bit, I'll say a little bit flakier in general. I had one yesterday, for example, unfortunately, that just didn't show up. And I will say, they also cancel at a higher rate. I don't like having canceled listings, but they cancel because they have such a high motivation factor, and then it just tails off very, very dramatically.
Oh, so you're saying they also cancel, like they sign a listing agreement with you and then they pull it off the market?
Some of them, yes. Whether before we go on the market or during the market. I mean, I've had people saying, Austin, I'm going into foreclosure. I need to sell as fast as possible. Great. We get them on the market. We get their foreclosure postponed, eventually taken off. And then like, well, now I don't have to sell since I'm not going into foreclosure. So I'm going to keep the house. So it's like, props to you. We're super excited to keep the house. But it's also like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah, I think you gotta take your motivation from the fact that you helped someone keep their house, even though it was not at your best interest.
And that's what that's perspective, right? Of what's best for the client.
I like that. So knowing that certain lead sources have different rates, I think what you've done a good job is you've been able to keep your eye on the prize and say, this is just a numbers game. At the end of the day, I make my 500 calls, my team makes their 1,000 calls, I show up to X amount of listing appointments, I close 100 a year. It does not matter. If 2/3 of them didn't show up, you would just have to increase your numbers for the 1/3 that was going to close.
Right.
And that's, I think, what people oftentimes forget, because you get so beaten down by the market and by being told no a couple times. How many times a day do you get told no, Austin?
Oh, bazillion. Right. And
that's a very scientific number. That's a lot. That's a bigger number than I've ever heard.
I get a lot. I mean, that's strange to kind of give you an idea of numbers that I look at myself. Let's say, for example, you wanted to sign 50 listings a year. For those that are listening, if you want to sign only 50 listings a year, that would be, let's call it one listing a week. For you to sign one listing a week, let's say you're average, not great at closing, not good at closing, and you closed 1 out of every 3 listing appointments you actually went on. AKA, you need to go on 150 appointments, which means how many people do you need to talk to? And how many people do you need to actually schedule appointments with? Let's say it takes 3 appointments set for 1 person to show up. And then you have that means you need to set 9 appointments every single week. How many people do you need to talk to at that point, right? Let's just say 1 out of 5 people, or let's even say 1 out of 10 people you talk to sets an appointment with very conservative numbers. You need to talk to 90 people a week, or, just almost 20 people a day to get 1 listing a week. And if you really break these numbers to the very small things, for all of you guys, it's very realistic that you can do this, right? There's no reason you shouldn't be able to sign 50 listings a year, if not more. It just comes down to the time and the discipline that you put into the effort.
So I should mention here. So you're probably the number 1 listing agent in the country right now. I know one other guy doing similar numbers in Arizona.
Okay.
He has 10 years of experience on you. But your dad was the number 1 agent in the country for a while, but that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So you're here to eat his lunch now. Which is exciting for you, but he's excited for you too. Mm-hmm. So if an agent is getting started today, and what systems can they realistically start with if they don't necessarily have a budget to buy the lead systems and to have a full team of a bunch of people all up front? Because that, you were able to start with that knowledge of we know the formula. You guys had the formula already, but you also you had the infrastructure to get that going quickly and to set it up correctly from day one. For someone that needs to build it slow and scale up to where you are in a 2-year period, where would you recommend they start lead source wise, or effort wise? Let's say they're starting with at the age of 22 with a small sphere and very little money.
So I would look at the free to cheap lead sources first, as in the pay on closing lead sources. There's a plethora of them out there. Listwithclever.com, Ojo, you got OpCity. There's all these lead sources out there that you don't pay up front. Sign up for them. Because if you get a lead and you close it, great, you make money. But if you get a lead and don't close it, you're not out the door or anything up front.
Right.
Number 2, I would be looking at working your sphere of influence, right? And what I mean by working your sphere of influence is talking to friends and family, building up deeper rapport, making sure you're posting on social media about what's going on in the market so people can see that you're actively in the business. And then go to your...
So a common issue that new agents often have, not just young agents, I should say new agents, is that nobody wants to be your first, right? Not to make a bad pun there, but your family members are oh, Austin's getting into real estate. Awesome. I want to be his 3rd or 4th sale, maybe in his 3rd or 4th year. I don't want to be his first. What conversations and what questions are you engaging your sphere with so that they quickly get that this isn't the next thing you're doing that you're going to drop soon? How are you conveying confidence, but also asking the right questions to ensure that your time with your sphere is fruitful?
I'll say I'm probably not doing the best of that by all means myself. What I've done thus far, and I'll mention, is I've done honestly 2 transactions out of my sphere of influence thus far.
Okay.
So not a whole lot. Mainly all my leads have been cold leads per se. But the first thing that comes to my mind is posting on social media. People need to see the evidence of success. Posting other sales that you have, posting about the business, posting you doing open houses. And if you're being consistent and on top of that, wow, Austin's doing a lot in the business. Even if you're not closing a lot, doing open houses and posting about those open houses can still convey success.
Well, and I think another piece there too is that most agents are either at a brokerage or at a big brokerage or on a team of some kind. And I think too often people forget that they can use their office's success as their own.
Yep.
Because, you just told us to post all of your listings, all of your success, that track record, but a lot of new agents just don't have that. And so I think, utilize the brokerage you're with, post about their sales in a way that you're allowed to. I know all the rules differ in every regionality, but I mean, you can come up with your unique take on each situation. And I also always tell agents, don't just share the success, share the struggle that you or your client had to overcome in order to win. Don't share like every little detail of how you negotiate an offer or how you do that, but share like what was the hurdle in that journey that you, with your critical thinking, intelligence, and wit, had to overcome in order to win.
Oh,
Yeah, like a couple of years ago, most agents were sharing, oh my God, I just sold another house before I even took photos or put it on the market. And I'm like, awesome, why would I use you?
yeah.
Like, if the house didn't go on the market, if you didn't take photos of it, like, what did you do? Like, did you even negotiate, or did you take the first offer that came? And so I think agents have like that line that they have to navigate really carefully of like marketing their track record of success without bragging. And I can tell that you're a humble guy, which I think probably works really, really well for you.
Yeah, but it's also you do need to bring up some sort of evidence of success, because again, to your point, Matt, why would someone want to work with you? If I'm brand new to the business, what do I do? Now I can say, you know what, Matt, I've actually sold almost 200 homes in the past 2.5 years, and now people are like, wow, that's very impressive. Back in the day when I first started, per se, I couldn't say those type of things. The average agent sells what, 4.5 homes per year nationally?
It's pretty bad. Whatever the number now is bad to terrible.
Right? But let's just say you sold 10 houses this last year. You know, I sold twice as many homes as the average agent nationally this last year. So that can still convey off a lot of success to people. And you're not lying, you sold over twice. And then people will still see that evidence of success that's specific to you.
So true. I worked, one of my favorite marketing stories is I worked with a little old lady, and she'd been a realtor for 50 years. Now, she was never at any one point a mega producer. However, doing the math, we realized that she had sold something like 60% of all the homes in a neighborhood over her entire career of 60 years. So we did a postcard, a mailer that said, hey, you don't know me, but I've been inside your house. And it was hilarious. Probably wouldn't work for like a dude.
Yeah, right.
Like it would be a little creepy. The little old lady can do that. And the back of it said, no, I'm not a stalker. I've sold 80% of the homes in your neighborhood over the last 50 years. I think I've been inside every house in the neighborhood. If you think I haven't and you've been there for 7 years, please call me. I'd love to come over for a cup of coffee. And she got 14 listings off of the 3 rounds of mailings that we did off of that.
Wow.
And that pretty much solidified her as the number one agent in that area. And I think, when you talk about stats and choosing the stats you're using, I think anyone can do that. I mean, if you sell one house in a neighborhood and there hasn't been a listing or a sale there in 2 years, you're the number one agent in that area.
Yeah.
And now you can start marketing that. And they've seen your sign, they've seen your face. There's a lot you can do there. I think what I'm most interested in from our call today so far has been that 90% of the agents I interview get 90 to 100% of their business off of their sphere of influence. But you've kind of cracked the code on getting business from kind of raw lead sources, but having a lot of them. So to end as like a Christmas bonus for everybody, I want to hear, what are the softwares that you use to manage your business? And then I want to know, like, what are some of the lead sources that you use in order to get these leads? I know you mentioned a couple. Let's start with, what softwares do you guys use to manage the business first?
So we have a lot of different ones. The 3 that I use every single day specifically is my Outlook calendar, of course, for my Outlook calendar email. I use Lofty for my CRM, and I use Clubhouse.
Lofty. So I'm not super familiar. Is that a real estate specific one, or are there any?
Chime.
Okay.
Have you heard of Chime, the CRM at all?
I have heard of Chime.
It's rebranded to Lofty, so that's the new name.
Got it. Okay.
And then I use Clubhouse University, so I can track my stats, see who's in my pipelines, etc. So that really helps me on that.
Okay. Very cool. Now, does that integrate with your CRM, or are you using it as a separate system?
Separate system.
Okay, got it.
And then
now let's talk about. Keep going.
This uses open to close to manage the transactions once they're going under contract.
Okay. Now, did you say your admins were in office, remote?
3 in office, 2 virtual assistants.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's talk about lead sources. Where are these coming from? Obviously, you have a lot of paid lead sources, which I'm excited to hear about.
We have like 50 different lead sources between we have used or currently are using. So like your listwithclever.com is a referral-based platform that I really like. Trigger Listings is a great lead source. That's a cash offer one. Leadslikecandy.com, cash offer lead source. Ylopo we use for buyer and seller leads. Realtor.com. You name it, we probably use them at some point.
What are you doing to Tell me are you guys doing a lot of stuff with like lead grading and like doing an annual review of your lead sources and like kicking them to the curb and investing more in other ones? Or is it really just a numbers game and you kind of like every year you just increase the total spend?
So I always look at the ROI first and foremost to see how we're doing. I have a Google Excel spreadsheet that my virtual assistant, whenever we get a closing, he updates it. So that way I can see, okay, trigger listings, we've had 4 closings with it for this much in GCI. And then that way I can go back and say, okay, what's my spend year to date for this lead source and see what my ROI is at that point and see if I need to dial it up or dial it back.
Okay, very cool. All right, well, Austin, this has been awesome. I cannot wait to see where you go in the next couple of years. Are there any goals that we should know about so we can hold you accountable to those?
Oh, man, my goal is to grow my team to 40 team members by the end of next year. My dad would say this year. My goal is 40 team members as an agent producing by the end of 2025.
Okay, and what are those team members going to be doing? What types of roles will they be holding?
All those are going to be agents. I want 40 agents on my team.
Okay, so that's kind of growing the brokerage.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Why is that the goal?
So number one, so I can get out of production and focus on continuing to grow. And I can also shift my focus from listings to doing other things that are still going to help the business grow and focus more on an agent basis rather than on a production basis and helping them grow their businesses.
Yeah, it's kind of figuring out, you now know after 2 years what you're motivated by and where your skills lie. I could see you doing extremely well, obviously managing others and managing people and holding them accountable to the system. So Austin, this has been awesome. If someone wanted to get a hold of you, I know that you are a coach also with Club Wealth. That's kind of how I met you. How could someone get a hold of you and what could they expect when they reach out?
Facebook's the best way, especially Facebook Messenger. I'll always respond to people on Facebook. So that I'm for sure that's the best way to reach me.
Okay, awesome. Well, Austin, thanks for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day. It's only 6:40 in the morning where you are, so you have a long day ahead of you.
Yes, sir, I do. Thanks so much, Matt.
All right, thank you.